An organization called Hellsing is known for killing vampires. A slave of that organization is Alucard, a vampire who fights vampires of his kind. Will Alucard be able to defeat all the vampires? Watch out and take care. At a nobleman's home, he meets a pretty lady and attempts to touch her seductively. He doesn't know that the lady is a vampire seducing him. As he touches her, he feels the presence of another man, a vampire hunter, from the Hellsing organization named Alucard. Alucard kills the vampire and goes to find other vampires. The leader of the Hellsing organization, Integra, visits the lieutenant of the D11 team, who explains to her that a particular priest relocated to a church at Cheddar. Since then, they noticed several missing people, so he sent a team to arrest the priest, but undead ghosts attacked his unit. Integra explains that the priest is a vampire, and anyone who sucked his blood becomes his warrior. Integra tells him they are taking control of Cheddar, and she has sent a warrior to find the priest. Meanwhile, a young D11 police officer named Saras is the only survivor of the attack by the priest. As she runs away from her colleagues, who are now ghosts, she enters the church and meets the priest. She is naive, so the priest attempts to suck her blood. But Alucard comes in, he kills all the ghosts there and attempts to kill the priest, but the priest uses Saras as a defense. Alucard asks Saras if she will die with the priest or follow him. Saras accepts to follow him, so Alucard shoots at the priest, knowing the bullet will pass through Saras, then revives Saras by turning her into a vampire. He returns to his elder carrying Saras in his hands. For her first order under Hellsing, Saras fails to shoot her target. She struggles to understand her new life as a vampire, but that's not her fault. That day, one of the workers, Walter, takes her into a dark room where she will spend her days and shows her a coffin she will be sleeping in. It dawns on her that she will never enjoy sunlight again. As she walks, Integra gives her blood to drink and warns her not to go around drinking blood. Unable to accept her new being, she refuses to drink the blood. For their next mission, they are to kill 2 teenage vampires who go around killing humans. As they proceed on the task, Alucard kills the boy and asks Saras to shoot at the girl. She is initially reluctant but does it eventually. Before leaving the crime scene, Alucard advises her to drink the blood she is offered, as if she doesn't drink it, her body will become weak. Integra gets to know that there is a chip that turns humans into vampires. She and her team test the dead vampire foreigner. They find the chip in his head and the doctor removes it. The doctor orders the corpse to be taken to the mortuary, contrary to the normal acts of burning vampire leftovers, because the victim is a foreigner. Meanwhile, a priest named Alexander Anderson travels into their city with the mission of killing the chipped vampire. While at the mortuary, the vampire wakes up and starts attacking the security. Integra sends a team led by Alucard to defeat the vampire, but Saras meets Alexander at the crime scene. Alexander injures Saras, but Alucard comes to her rescue. Alucard defeats the chipped vampire and also shoots at Alexander, but Alexander is a human regenerator. He regenerates himself after being shot down and fires multiple swords at Alucard. As the fight is about to continue, Integra shows Alexander a letter from the Archbishop, so Alexander leaves them. Integra insults Alucard and Saras for being defeated by Alexander. Alucard decides to stop being Saras's master. He offers her his blood and tells her that if she sucks his blood, she will become free. However, Saras refuses and accepts to remain his slave. She gets accustomed to being a vampire, but she still doesn't take the blood. For their next mission, Integra figures an internet guru videos death for a job and sells the videos. In his latest video, the picture of Gareth, their latest commander with Hellsing's badge, has been uploaded. Integra knows their organization must be secret, so she commissions Saras to find the man. Successfully, Saras arrests this man and takes him into the authorities. Meanwhile, a journalist with a great obsession with murder videos gets notified that there is a vampire who videos himself drinking blood. After Saras' successful operation, she goes to check out the criminal, but the police send her out. She stops by a bar where she buys a drink, but she isn't satisfied. As she leaves the bar, she walks into the house where Alucard is. Alucard defeats the vampire and sees the journalist behind the glass. The police department takes the man, and Integra suggests the journalist shouldn't be punished by law, so she allows Alucard to feed on her. Saras watches Alucard as he feasts on this girl. She gets home that day and feeds on blood for the first time. 2 brothers, Jan and Luke, create a team of vampires. A spy from the government body comes to them with a tag from a prisoner. Luke immediately recognizes it as a trap, so he kills the man and throws his body off with the country's flag beside him. The news of the incident reaches Integra, who is angry at the increasing numbers of chip-made vampires and decides to call a roundtable discussion. Before that, she sends her team to the brothers' hangout. Luke figures Hellsing is coming at them, so he leaves with his brother immediately. Seras gets there with the team. She smells blood and smoke and figures a bomb is in the room. They escape from the room before the bomb explodes. Meanwhile, the group elders start the roundtable discussion, where Integra complains about the high rate of chip-made vampires and asks the other department to investigate who is supplying this chip. On the other hand, the brothers plan to invade Hellsing's mansion. They gain entrance by killing the security and breaking the door. All the warriors at the mansion fight against these intruders and place a call to Integra to inform her of the happening. Seras saves the commander and takes him to a safe zone where Alucard is. She calls Alucard to fight, but he says he hasn't seen the opponent. All the roundtable members are on the 3rd floor, and Luke has burnt their emergency helicopter. Walter attempts to get to the 3rd floor, and he asks Seras to follow him. They fight Jan and all the ghosts while Luke goes to fight Alucard. Luke has the same regenerating skills as Alucard, but when Alucard turns into a monster and cuts off his legs, he realizes Alucard is stronger. Alucard defeats Luke and walks away. Jen manages to evade Walter and Seras. He goes to the 3rd floor to meet Integra, but she shoots him with mercury-filled bullets. She says she won't let him die unless he tells her who sent them, so he decides to kill himself. Following the invasion of her mansion, Integra is forced to euthanize the ghost of her subordinates and coordinate their funeral. She loses more than 80% of his armies, and the living ones are the ones who are away on the invasion day. While she commands Walter to investigate properly, he receives an invite from Enrico Maxwell of the Escarlot organization. Enrico asks her to meet him at the museum, and upon getting there, Enrico first mocks her for the loss of life at her organization and complains about the human chips. Enrico says if Hellsing can't destroy the vampires, then the Escarlot organization will destroy both Hellsing and the vampires. He calls Integra a sow, and Alucard gets angry. Alucard comes to defend his master but leaves when Integra leaves. Meanwhile, Seras and the remaining team lay ambush for a vampire who converts a bus at the underground tunnel. Little did they know that Alexander had appeared again. Alexander kills the vampire and meets Seras when she enters the bus. Luckily for Seras, Alucard comes in to help her. He fights with Alexander until Alexander cuts off his head. Shockingly, Alucard's body reunites again and he cuts off Alexander's hands. In defeat, Alexander disappears but promises to defeat Alucard the next time they fight. On the other hand, Integra refuses Enrico's proposition and tells him to leave his territory. In Hong Kong, the Hong Kong police raided a freak chip-producing center. Meanwhile, Integra and Walter employ some foreign recruits, contrary to their organization's history of using warriors from SAS or D11. Seras trains these recruits before leaving for her father's house. As she enters, she meets a visitor named Harry Anders. He says he is with MI5 and he needs her help, so he tells her to follow her somewhere. They go to meet Helena, an old vampire who lives in a lonely castle. Anders tells Helena about these artificial vampires formed with chips and asks her if she can help them arrest the vampires. She tells them she isn't interested in anything that will take her away from their castle and asks them to leave. Anders leaves with Seras and drops her off at the door. After he drives farther, his car explodes. On the other hand, Alucard ties Integra to a pole and releases him afterward. He laughs when Integra queries him and says he only wants to know if Integra knows what it means to be a captive. The Hellsing organization figures out a castle that is being used to produce freaks. Integra asks her warriors to raid the castle, but as they near, Seras feels odd about the castle and complains. Outside the castle, a representative from SAS tells Integra the castle is their responsibility as some freaks are producing illegal ammunition in it. Reluctantly, Integra orders her warriors to return home. Upon arriving at her mansion, Integra meets her younger sister Laura at home. As expected, she welcomes her sister and asks Walter to prepare Laura a room. However, Laura passes beside Seras' room and Seras feels something is odd. She asks Walter about the girl, and Walter says it is Integra's sister. Also, Alucard meets a vampire who introduces himself as Incognito. As Alucard sets out to fight Incognito, Laura reveals herself to be a vampire sent from an organization and starts torturing Integra. Seras feels something and attempts to go to Integra's room, but Walter, who has been kept under a curse, stops and attacks her. Integra screams Alucard's name, but before they all get into her room, Laura has bitten her. Alucard kills Laura, but but Integra stabs herself to prevent herself from turning into a vampire. They struggle to restore Integra's life. Seras apologizes to Alucard for entering the room late, but Alucard tells her the essential things in a person is the ability never to give up. He tells her to learn from Integra, who sacrifices her life to ensure she doesn't die. While Integra is in a coma, she remembers the first time she met Alucard. When she was younger, she left for her father's teachings, where her father told her about vampires and told her how terrible vampires are. As the lecture continued, her father collapsed. He was taken to the hospital, where he died after telling his brother Richard to take care of Integra and help her become a great house leader. 3 days after her father's death, her uncle Richard sent men all over the house to find her and kill her so he would become the leader of the house. She listened to this conversation from the ceiling and thought of what to do. She remembered her father's words that when faced with a real-life situation, she should go to the underground jail and she would find her. She heeded her father's words and proceeded to the underground jail. Richard and his men also came to the prison to find her. As she was in front of the jail, Richard found her and attempted to shoot her. She opened the jail's door and fell under the stairs. She was injured and her blood flowed to Alucard, who was tied in the jail. Alucard leaked her blood and regained his strength. He fought her opponents and appreciated her for the blood. Just as her father had taught her about vampires, she called Alucard a monster and wanted to kill him. Alucard accepted to serve her and called her his master. He defended her from Richard's bullet and made her kill Richard. And that was when their master-servant relationship started. In the present time, the SAS agents sent into the castle are captured by the freaks and are turned into chipped vampires. Integra slightly recovers from her illness. Walter tells her that about 60 freaks attacked a girl's dormitory where they completely sucked the blood of some girls. The report has it that the freaks are in SAS uniforms. Integra figures the freaks are the team sent into the castle by SAS. She also gets an honorary letter from the Queen of Britain asking her to organize a congratulatory party. The party is to be held at the Tower of London, but she brings the party to her mansion. To distract her enemies, she sends a false team towards the Tower of London, and her enemies take the bait. They attack the false squad, so she sends all her team to defeat the freaks. Meanwhile, the commando tells Sarah she will be transferred to a new team. His reason is that the recruits are scared of her. Depressed, Sarah decides to visit Helena and talk to her about it. At Helena's home, she sees Helena has been defeated and eaten by Incognito. As Incognito attempts to defeat Saras too, Helena brings her head out of his body to distract him. He cuts her off and leaves. Saras weeps over the death of Helena, but Helena tells her not to worry. Helena advises her to destroy Incognito and tells her the Hellsing team is walking into a trap. She tells Saras to be fast so she won't risk her organization. Meanwhile, Alucard also gets a weird feeling, leaving Integra in the praying room to fight. At the Tower of London, the Hellsing armies are being attacked by assassins. Also, the Round Table members declare Hellsing as a terrorist organization. Integra loses most of her troops, including her commander, and the British army stands in front of the tower to kill the Hellsing armies. Upon seeing the situation, Saras and Alucard go to fight for their organization. While Saras fights with one of the freaks, Alucard fights with Incognito. Meanwhile, the news of her organization's defeat causes Integra to take a plane to the Tower of London. Eventually, Saras defeats the freak she is fighting with, while Alucard presumes he has defeated Incognito. He asks Incognito who his human master is and who is the person that ordered the production of freak vampire chips. Incognito laughs and revives himself. He attacks both Alucard and Saras and cuts Alucard off. Saras carries the pieces of her master and cries as Incognito walks away. Eventually, Walter sends Integra into the tower through his ropes, but Integra falls into the captivity of Incognito. Incognito calls the demon in him to consume Integra, but luckily for her, Alucard drinks all the blood in the tower and regains his strength. He goes to Incognito and they fight. Alucard gets overwhelmed by Incognito, but he eventually defeats him. Following the battle, the traitor among the Round Table elders is found and punished, but the creator and producer of the chip freaks are still not found. At the end of the movie, Alucard and his master Integra are at home. He asks Integra if there is anything she wants him to do. Thank you for watching the recap. Kindly subscribe to our channel to get notified when we post the next recap.